Shalom, everyone, and happy Sabbath to you. This is Chris Wilson of Torah and Messiah YouTube channel, and I came across some articles I had written by the late Elder Voy Wilks. I wanted to bring one to you today called The Sacred Name in Scriptures, and this was written in October of 1996. And let us begin. The Sacred Name in Scriptures by Voy Wilks. October 20th, 1996. The name Yahweh in Scriptures. Is this something new, or has this name been in the sacred writings all along? The name of the Creator, Yod-Heh-Wah-Heh, Yahweh, has been in the sacred writings all along, in every generation since the time of Moses. All that is needed to prove this is to consult the Old Testament in the Hebrew language. And there it is, the four letters, commonly known as the Tetragrammaton, Yod-Heh-Wah-Heh, the sacred name, Yahweh. All Hebrew scriptures contain the name Yahweh, and have done so since about 1490 BCE. Translations from the Hebrew. It is only the translations of the Holy Scriptures into English and other languages which do not contain the sacred name Yahweh. Instead of leaving the sacred name in place thousands of times as it appears in the Hebrew Scriptures, English translators choose to substitute Lord. Greek translators choose to substitute Kyrios. Latin translators choose to substitute Deus. German translators choose to substitute Herr, the same title given to Adolf Hitler. There are, however, at least 7 biblical versions in which the sacred name Yahweh has been restored to the text, in whole or in part. The Emphasized Bible, a Protestant version of 1897, the Holy Bible in Hausa, a Nigerian language, 1932, the Holy Name Bible, a Protestant version of 1963, the Jerusalem Bible, a Catholic version, 1966, the Sacred Scriptures, the Bethel edition, 1981, the Scriptures, the C.J. Coster version, 1994, the NIV Interlinear Hebrew-English Old Testament, a Protestant version, 1979. Ancient evidence of the name. The Dead Sea Scrolls, some of which date to 100 BCE, contain the name Yahweh, just as modern Hebrew scriptures do. A recently found papyrus roll of the Septuagint version is dated in the 2nd or 1st century BCE, and although these fragments of Deuteronomy are written in the Greek language, quote, not one of these fragments shows an example of Kyrios or Theos used instead of the divine name, but in each instance the Tetragrammaton is written in Aramaic characters. This proves the original Septuagint version did contain the divine name Yod-Heh-Wah-Heh wherever it occurred in the Hebrew original. That was quoted from the Kingdom Interlinear Translation of the Greek Scriptures. In its foreword, pages 11 and 12 of the 1969 edition. In addition, fragmentary text of the minor prophets of the Bible found in a cave in 1961 in Wadi Nahal Hever, Israel, are dated at 50 BCE to 50 of the Common Era. The report is as follows, and I quote, although the text is in Greek, one word and one word only repeatedly appears in Hebrew, the Tetragrammaton, the 4 Hebrew letters Yod-Heh-Wah-Heh, often spelled and pronounced Yahweh, the ineffable name of the Mighty One. Moreover, the Tetragrammaton is written, not in square Aramaic Hebrew script used at the time the scrolls were written, but in the Paleo-Hebrew script used before the Babylonian exile in the 6th century BC. End quote. That was taken from Books in Belief, Biblical Archaeology Review, March-April edition of 1991, page 4. So what further proof is needed? The Creator's name Yahweh has always been in the Old Testament writings and still is today. Scriptures in the Hebrew language. Here we have a few verses from Exodus 19 where the name Yahweh is underlined. You can see in the 2nd verse we've got Yahweh used twice. In the 3rd verse, used once. In the 4th verse, used once as well. In totality, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9 times Yod-Heh-Wah-Heh is used in Exodus 19. The original New Testament, did it contain the name Yahweh? Yahshua the Messiah made known to his disciples the Father's name in John chapter 17, verse 26. Why? For what purpose? Did they learn the name only to lay it on a shelf, or did they regularly call on and worship that name? The latter is the more reasonable. There is reason to believe some, perhaps most, of the New Testament was originally written in the Hebrew language. If true, then it is likely the name Yahweh appeared in the texts. We can with reasonable certainty affirm that the book of Matthew and the letter to the Hebrews, when originally written, contain the name Yahweh. According to ancient witnesses, these books were written in the Hebrew language. Later, Luke carefully translated them into Greek, reported by Clement and Irenaeus, recorded in Eusebius' Ecclesiastical History, Book 5, chapters 8 and 14. Papias, Ante-Nicene Fathers, Volume 1, Erdman's, 1956, page 154. It is reasonable to believe the original New Testament scriptures contain the name Yahweh, since the sacred writings of the Old Testament contain this name almost 7,000 times. The preface to many Bibles, footnotes in Bibles, encyclopedias, Bible dictionaries, and other reference books reveal the true name, Yahweh. For example, take the preface to the emphasized version by Rotherham. He wrote several pages explaining the importance of the name, pointing out that it was a grave mistake to have deleted this name from the sacred writings in our English versions. Obviously, the Most High El is pleased with his name. Proof? The name Yahweh appears in the Old Testament alone 6,823 times. I am told. He requests or commands all to worship that name, to call upon that name, to extol that name. Why do people refuse to do so? What will happen to those who know his name and still refuse to call on it? Yahweh is pleased, happy, and proud of his name. Therefore, he would not suddenly change his name in order to please the Gentiles of the 1st and 2nd century. We can be certain this did not happen. However, if he had chosen to change his name, we can be sure he would have made it known to his people, especially to the apostles. But there is no record of such a name change. To emphasize the importance of the name Yahweh, please note the scriptures which follow. In the following scriptures, how can anyone ignore the name Yahweh? Scriptures advise us to acknowledge the name, 1 Kings chapter 8, verse 33 and 35, RSV. Bless the name, Psalm 145 and verse 21, King James Version. Call on the name, Psalm chapter 80 and verse 18, Psalm 99 and verse 6, Isaiah chapter 12 and verse 4. Confess the name, 2 Chronicles chapter 6, verse 24 and 25, 1 Kings chapter 8, verse 35 and 36. Declare the name, Psalms 22 and 22, John 17 and 26, Romans 9, 17, and Hebrews 2, chapter 2, verse 12. Do not despise the name, Malachi chapter 1, verse 6. Exalt the name, Psalm 18, 46 and Psalm 34, 3. Give thanks to the name, Psalm 106 in verse 47 and Psalm 12 in verse 4. Glorify the name, 1 Chronicles chapter 16, verse 9 and verse 10, Psalm 86, verse 9 and verse 12. Honor the name, Psalm 66, verses 2 and 4. Love the name, Psalm chapter 5 and verse 11, Psalm 69 and verse 36, Isaiah 56, verses 5 and 6. Magnify the name, 2 Samuel chapter 7 and verse 26, Psalm 69 and verse 30. Make the name known, Exodus chapter 9 and verse 16. Mention the name, Isaiah 12, verse 4, Isaiah 26, verse 13. Praise the name, 2 Samuel 22:50, Psalm 148, verse 1 and 2. Publish the name, Deuteronomy 32, verse 3. Remember the name, Exodus 3:15, Psalm 45:17. Sacrifice to the name, Psalm 116, verses 13 and verses 17. Seek the name, Psalm 83, verse 16. Sing to the name. Psalm chapter 9, verse 1 and 2. Think on the name. Malachi 3, verse 16. Trust in the name. Isaiah 50 and verse 10. So we see, friends, that there is many verses that allude to us upholding the name of Yahweh. It was a criminal act to delete the name of Yahweh, Most High, and replace it with substitutes. All right, well, shalom, my friends, and that was The Sacred Name in Scriptures by Voy Wilks. Left behind an excellent legacy over in Cisco, Texas at the Assembly of Yahweh Seventh Day. And you too can also receive a lot of these little pamphlets and writings of the late Elder Voy Wilks if you want to. It is P.O. Box 509, Cisco, Texas 76437. Or you can reach out to them by phone 254-442-3962. In the meantime, folks, I will be sending out more of these short writings of the late Voy Wilks. Happy Sabbath to you. Have a wonderful day.